Prosopopeia. Not the easiest word to say, but it is a tool that we're going to deal with during our unit on Anglo-Saxon writing. So ultimately, this video will help you understand the meaning of prosopopeia and how the tool is used in literature. And we'll specifically discuss it during our in-class discussion on the dream of the Rood. So what is prosopopeia? Prosopopeia is ultimately a rhetorical device in which a speaker or writer communicates to the audience by speaking as another person or object. Now, prosopopeia comes from two words in ancient Greek, which is prosopon, which translates to face or person, and peion, which means to make or to do. Thus, prosopopeian literally means to make the face of someone else. And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, this should remind you a little bit of Arya, who is quite literally a prosopopeian. Alright, back to the video. So why do authors use prosopopeian? It ultimately takes the blame off characters by placing an unfavorable point of view on the shoulders of an imaginary person or object, but it's still communicated through the characters. So their characters speak, but the audience's reactions, which may be negative, will go towards this imaginary person or object rather than the communicator. Now, this is the primary reason why prosopopeia is used today, but when we look at literature in the past, we can see many different reasons as to why a character is speaking through another person or object. Now, let's take a minute to talk about how prosopopeia is different from personification and also apostrophe. So, if we remember back to our literary tools, personification is giving human-like characteristics or abilities to inanimate objects, abstract concepts, or animals. The alligator smiled. Love came knocking at the door. The lightning danced through the sky. These are all examples of personification. Apostrophe. This occurs when a speaker, narrator, or character speaks directly to an inanimate object or abstract concept. So, if the speaker says, "O moon, why doth thou shine so bright?" the character is speaking directly to the moon, which is an inanimate object, and therefore that is apostrophe. So prosopopeia is similar to personification and apostrophe, but also has some pretty significant differences. Because prosopopeia, remember, is when the speaker, narrator, or character provides a different perspective, well, in an artistic way. They take on the perspective of another person or object in order to strengthen their arguments or by making their writing more memorable or potentially less offensive. So we do see this device used in the day-to-day. So imagine that your friend is imitating her mom. When my time. The friend takes on her mother's voice and her way of talking when talking about her. This is pretty important. Part of prosopopeia is that you actually adopt the mode of talking that the object or person has. Now let's look at some examples from literature. The iron tongue of midnight hath told 12 lovers to bed, 'tis almost fairy time. So here we have our speaker, but the speaker is taking on the perspective of midnight in order to communicate an argument. That is prosopopeia. How can you be quiet when a sword has ordered her against Ashkelon and the seashore? There is her assignment. Here we have a speaker who is taking on the perspective of a sword, speaking through the sword in order to further his or her argument. Now let's look at an example from real life. In a court, during a court trial, a prosecutor may suggest to jurors that a homicide victim is speaking to us through the evidence. By taking on the perspective of the homicide victim, the prosecutor is therefore strengthening his or her argument. One more example from real life. In the second section of his Cooper Union Address, Abraham Lincoln created a mock debate between Republicans and the South, a debate in which he becomes spokesman for the party. So Abraham Lincoln took on the perspective and the speaking quality and tone of another person, and therefore he was using prosopopeia. Now, The example that we're going to deal with in our next class occurs in the Dream of the Rood. And in this poem, the wooden cross verbally describes the death of Christ from its own point of view. So the speaker in the poem will take on the perspective of the wooden cross, taking on both its perspective and its voice, and then describing from this perspective and in this voice the death of Christ. What we will discuss in class is one, why the author chose to use Prosopopeia, and the ultimate message of the poem in the context of Anglo-Saxon culture. Alright, thanks for watching.